Make sure you guys hit the subscribe button if you guys are enjoying the content that we're throwing up. And make sure you guys hit the like button if you enjoy the video. And yeah, let's begin. What's going on, guys? This is Rob, and today we're going to shift our focus to the DC universe, which we've kind of been doing this week, and discuss one of Superman's most absurd villains, Mr. Mxyzptlk. Now, if you've watched our videos over the course of the week, you know that Mr. Mxyzptlk was exceedingly powerful, but if you're new here to this whole series, Mr. Mxyzptlk was created by Jerry Siegel and Joe Shuster and first appeared in Superman number 30 in 1944. Now, he comes from the fifth dimension, where our laws of physics do not apply, as his first appearance was in the golden age of comics, when heroes like Superman were in stories that were really just one issue long before moving on to the next issue. We don't really get a ton of continuity or backstory. Now, when Mr. Mxyzptlk shows up, he just plays a series of jokes on Superman in order to just irritate him. But even though those jokes are meant to be humorous, they actually give us some insight into his power level. For instance, he's able to alter his own weight so that he's too heavy for paramedics to pick up and change the voice of the mayor to that of a donkey. While these don't seem too impressive at first, they do clue us into the fact that Mxyzptlk is capable of altering reality. What little bit we do learn about his background in this issue is that he's a jester in the fifth dimension, which is why he has such an affinity for playing jokes. Now, as for most of his appearances that he makes, especially the earliest ones, he basically just shows up to annoy Superman before being sent back to his home dimension when Superman tricks him into saying his name backwards. Now, Mxyzptlk's origin is first explored in Young Justice number 3 by Peter David, where it's revealed that he is a time-traveling researcher who finds out about his future and decides not to annoy Superman, but instead devote his life to learning. This had a drastic effect on the timeline and plunged Earth into a post-apocalyptic state. Realizing the cause of this desolate future was the absence of Mxyzptlk's encounters with Superman, members of Young Justice, Robin, Superboy, and Impulse figure out that his sense of humor has not yet been developed, so they expose him to a Three Stooges movie. And so after viewing the film, Mxyzptlk develops a love of slapstick humor and vows to return to annoy Superman periodically, and thereby fixes the timeline. Now, like nearly every character, Mxyzptlk's origin is changed by the New 52 reboot across DC Comics from 2011, and it's at this point that we learn that he's a wizard in the fifth dimension, where his job was to entertain the king. Now, one of the primary ways he did this was by designing challenges for heroes in a variety of worlds, with the one that was the most successful and therefore the most entertaining to the king being Superman. Now, the favor Mxyzptlk gains with the king causes his former court magician, to become insanely jealous and plot to kill him, but would actually kill the king by mistake. And so eventually, Mxyzptlk would come to be the king of the fifth dimension himself, but would basically be stuck in a time loop, as he would later be entertained by a jester named Mxyzptlk and killed by Now, Mxyzptlk was also a key figure in the Rebirth publishing initiative, which was more of a soft reboot of the DC universe. One of the key storylines of the reboot revolved around the appearance of a second Clark Kent in Metropolis. The identity of this imposter is revealed to be Mxyzptlk, who'd just been imprisoned by a man named Mr. Oz, who is actually Superman's father Jor-El. And so he escapes and gets angry that Superman didn't notice that he was gone, and so he transforms himself into Clark Kent and then brainwashes himself into believing that he is Clark Kent. He sets up a challenge for Superman, which culminates in the merging of the New 52 and pre-Flashpoint versions of Superman and Lois Lane. Something that I want to throw out here that I kind of want to talk about here for a second is the Action Comics and Superman Rebirth line of comics. Here's the thing, guys. Superman had not really been interesting following the death of his character, and even before that he hadn't really been interesting. Superman wasn't really interesting since the 1950s, right? Like, you go into basically everything after Julius Schwartz kind of did this whole reworking of Superman's character in the 1970s when Mort Weisinger left, and he had just not been interesting at all ever since that point. But then you go into DC Universe Rebirth. It's probably the best Superman storytelling that there's been in decades, right? For decades and decades and decades, Superman stories weren't that great. And then we get some amazing stories. Even the most staunch Superman fans would have to admit his stories weren't that great before, and DC Universe Rebirth was mind-blowing. And so what did DC do in response to all that popularity? They kicked off the writers and replaced them with Brian Michael Bendis, who did a terrible job. So yeah, that's kind of where we are right now. Superman kind of sucks again, but for Mxyzptlk's powers, he's able to warp reality in any way that he can dream up. In the Silver Age of comics, this was attributed to a magical ability, which was why Superman was so susceptible to his hijinks, but it's also been explained as just being a product of existing in a fifth dimension beyond those that we're able to perceive. In other words, the fact that we exist in 3 dimensions makes it seem as if things from the fifth dimension are magic. He's seemingly immortal, as he's tried to kill himself by giving up his powers and summoning Doomsday to take him out. And even when he's killed by Doomsday, he immediately comes back to life. To that end, Mxyzptlk does not require air, water, or food to survive, and it is impossible to deal any physical damage to him. As with all the many reality warping characters that we've covered in the series, it's really not feasible to list all of his powers because what he can do is limited only by his imagination. He's unbound by the laws of physics and by the very concept of time, as he's able to take all of Earth's gravity away and can move forward and backward in time at will. He's able to travel into other dimensions as well. For instance, he can enter the pages of a comic book or become a character in a television show. He frequently breaks the fourth wall, indicating that he's aware of reality outside the DC Comics multiverse and has even been able to interact with the writers of an issue of Superman. Now, theoretically, Mxyzptlk can do anything, and we see an example of what he's theoretically capable of in the Elseworlds title of World's Funnest, which you'll find down in the description because we just finished covering this week. And while it's not really part of DC canon, does it really matter when you're dealing with a character who can do anything? It doesn't really matter whether it's canon or not, but in that series, we saw Mxyzptlk hit the Spectre over the head with the Earth, and then he and Batmite literally tear the universe apart. After that, they go through all the various universes of the DC multiverse and destroy them. So like Earth 3, where the crime syndicate is, the Dark Knight Returns universe, the DC animated universe, all of them are totally destroyed and then remade. And so Mxyzptlk is depicted as being effectively omnipotent here. Granted, this is an Elseworlds story, so it's not canon, but it is a version of the character that exists, so I simply wanted to throw it out there. Now, at the end of the day, Mxyzptlk is certainly the most powerful of Superman's foes, and it's only because his desire to have fun at Superman's expense that he isn't perceived that way. If he really was a truly evil character, instead of just playfully antagonistic, he'd be able to do some exceedingly dangerous damage. If you want an example of what Mxyzptlk could do if he was motivated by evil, just go check out my Beyond Omega level video on Emperor Joker, which is a story where Joker stole 99% of Mxyzptlk's power and was able to rewrite reality in his image, and he's able to subjugate Darkseid, Ganthet, Highfather, Zeus, and the Phantom Stranger, who are some of the most powerful entities in the entirety of DC Comics. And so the Spectre even said that Emperor Joker would be capable of destroying the universe, and that he actually follows through on doing so and then remakes the universe. And so it stands to reason that Mxyzptlk would be capable of doing these things as well if he chose to. And so it's lucky for Superman that he's more interested in playing practical jokes on him instead of destroying all of reality. But with that being said, guys, we're going to bring this video to an end. If you are new here to Comics Explained, make sure you guys hit the sub button to become part of the Rob Corps. If you guys enjoyed this video, make sure you drop a like and make sure you check out the comments section. Leave some comments down below for what future characters you want me to cover. Now we'll catch you all later. Peace.